So now we've got President Biden going to Wilmington and actually making a statement like, well, on the eve of this trial, I just want to say that I love my son. And it's more of that. But can I tell you, it's still inappropriate. It's not appropriate for the sitting president of the United States to be commenting on any sort of a criminal case. I said this last week when he commented on Trump. Stay out of it. Stop it. Some way or shape or form. You're influencing things. The Trump case still has to go up on appeal. Your son's case is in the process of jury selection. So be quiet. Shut up. Pipe down. You don't have to comment on everything. It's a clear attempt to influence those Delawareans who love the family Biden.
I will say from that vantage point, Biden is playing it politically well. Like, the best thing he can do is a play for sympathy. And I do think it would behoove him to say, my son did not act properly or appropriately. He can't do that because it would be an admission of guilt. But I do think it would get him some respect with the American people. And it would be the right thing to do when some of this comes down. But the play for sympathy is obviously what they're going for. There was an article in the New York Times and an article in the Washington Post this weekend that not only is he not distancing himself from his son during this, he is bringing him closer. They were seen biking in Rehoboth Beach together over the weekend. And that's obvious. And Hunter Biden attended a state dinner for Kenya maybe 2 weeks ago, where Merrick Garland was also in attendance. Yep. And so the optics,
man essentially prosecuting him.
Yeah, the optics of this are not appropriate.
No, you're completely right. So this New York Times article you mentions, Emily, I'll give you a couple of lines from it. President Biden wakes up every day to a list of concerns he must address as commander-in-chief. But at the top of that list, people who know him say, is a concern that nags at him as a father: the legal problems of his son, Hunter Biden. Mr. Biden has refused to shut out his son or treat him as a political liability. In fact, the president has a tendency to pull his son closer. The worst things seem to get, and on it goes. I don't remember a single article like this about how much Trump has to manage and the stresses of the trial on him, and how nonetheless he's running this multi-million-dollar business and running for president and holding his family close while he navigates these tricky waters.
You know what's interesting about that is it's the media regurgitating the exact line of argumentation from the Biden family.
Yes.
So it's not as though they're like being a little bit skeptical of it. Like, wow, this was a pretty messed up foreign lobbying scheme where he was making all this money and then doing all this drugs, like blah, blah, blah. No, they're just straight up taking the Biden administration's side, the Biden family's side. Like, no skepticism, no nuance, just this is really tough for them.
And beyond that, there may be some truth to this. Okay, maybe Biden is upset, but the guy is also running for re-election, and everything should be viewed through a political lens. And I have not seen any coverage about the political tactic of playing for sympathy.
Because they're in on it.
That is part of this as well.
Yeah, they have no desire to call attention to that.
And,
they
frankly, President Trump does a different version of that, where he says, I'm a victim, I'm being persecuted, and that's his version of that. That is always covered as a political tactic.
Yeah, that's
what
right.
Biden is doing is not covered as the same sort of playing politics.
We've seen Politico drop an article on these two judges who are going to be handling this case, and then the one that's coming up in September, pointing out that they're very tricky because they both have a background in patent law, which is very sneaky because it makes it tough for the Senate Judiciary Committee to reject them when they come up for nomination, because patent law is so boring, no one can figure out what your political bias is. They just know you were appointed by Donald Trump. It sucks. That's really what Politico is arguing here. They're pissed off that both of these judges are Trump appointees and that they got on because of their fucking background in patent law. Sorry.
I think this is much more funny to somebody who's gone through law school.
So is this Cannon and Norica, or is
it's Norica, and the other one is Scarzi, who's going to handle the September trial on the tax charges. Yeah.
Slippery patent lawyers.
I know. Such an unfortunate draw for Hunter. But honestly, like, this is frankly what we needed in the Trump trial, at least one sane person who wasn't a partisan hack, right? If the judge had been at least somewhat fair, or, God forbid, even a Republican, who wasn't a never Trump Republican, people could have had maybe slightly more faith that the process itself was going as according to plan. Sometimes you get a rabid prosecutor, but the system's supposed to slow down the rabid train because we have protections in place. But this judge was complicit in allowing Alvin Bragg to do everything he wanted to Donald Trump in a way that really undermined people's belief in the rule of law. The other thing was, let's see. The judge, Noriega, she also blocked a key piece of evidence that the defense wanted to use about the gun forms, which honestly was like the stupidest piece. Apparently, when Hunter Biden filled out the application for the gun form, he needed proof of ID, so he showed a passport, so they wrote that down on the form. And then months later, when the ATF started sniffing around after the gun had been retrieved, the widow had called, all the things, they added a piece about his second form, his driver's license, just to show that they got two forms of ID, I guess. Hunter Biden's team trying to make this big deal out of that, like, aha, you see, they messed with the form that is at the very heart of this case. It's not an honest representation of the drug form. And listen to what Noriega ruled. This is what we needed in the Trump case. She ruled as follows. I'm not admitting that altered version of the form because it is, quote, irrelevant and inadmissible. And she went on to blast Hunter Biden's team for pushing it, calling this a conspiratorial theory and saying it is, quote, unsupported rhetoric about the motivations of the Wilmington gun store employees, and says as follows. This is the line we needed in the Trump case over and over. Quote, any probative value it arguably has is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice, confusion of issues, and misleading the jury. It's not hard. It's done all the time by federal and state court judges. It just didn't happen in the Trump case on any of those controversial admissions.
That would have been the line about the Stormy testimony, I
At
think.
least. And all the
sexual
the
details.
non-prosecution agreement between Pecker and the feds, or AMI and the feds, Michael Cohen's guilty plea on the election charges, federal election violation. None of that. You can say that same thing. Any probative value it arguably has is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice, confusion of issues, and misleading the jury. This is an objection you learn your first year of law school. You do it over and over again in moot court, never mind real court. Every lawyer knows it's available. Every judge knows it's one of the most important tests they have to weigh. Not whether it's prejudicial. Everything that comes in against a defendant is prejudicial, unfairly prejudicial, or so prejudicial that the prejudice outweighs its probative value. Judge Merchan refused to do that analysis at all in most cases, and certainly not in Trump's favor.
And then at one point, when he allowed Stormy's testimony, he then chastised the defense for saying, you should have challenged this testimony after he had rejected their challenge to allowing the testimony. Like, it was wild.
Eliana, it's so bad because what happened with Stormy's testimony is the defense went up to the bench before she took the stand and said, we don't think this is relevant. We think it's highly unfairly prejudicial.
They were questioning the probative value of Stormy Daniels.
There you go. Thank you, Emily. See, you did go to law school right here. I just put you through it.
I'm just hanging out.
So they went up there and said, this should not be allowed. And the prosecution said, well, you opened the door by saying he didn't have the affair on opening statement. Okay, fine. That is something they shouldn't have done. So now she's coming in. But then they said, well, you should limit the testimony severely to just, did she have the affair, blah, blah, blah. And the judge was giving them a long leash to question Stormy Daniels. So they had already lost. Like, the judge wasn't like, all right, you can ask her the following 5 questions and that's it. The judge was like, go for it. So having lost, the defense sat down and, like many defense attorneys, didn't want to look to the jury like, this is killing us, this is terrible for us, by continuously popping up, object on every single question. And then it got out of control, and the judge blamed the fact that it got out of control on the defense. That's just one example.
But it's amazing because the media, like, I read multiple media reports that said Merchan made multiple accommodations to Donald Trump, that he was just accommodating Trump left and right. He let him have a TV while he was in the waiting room. So he did everything. He bent over backwards to accommodate Donald Trump.
That is ridiculous. I know. I was arguing with Dan Abrams on News Nation, and he was like, he didn't let in the Access Hollywood tape. I'm like, okay. Literally, there would have been a mistrial that minute, but he did let in the transcript of the Access Hollywood tape, which, why was that in there? That did not belong at all in this trial. And you should have seen the things that he was going to let the prosecution cross-examined Trump on if Trump took the stand. Like in the Harvey Weinstein case, it effectively prohibited Trump from taking the stand. Being in debt is like sinking in quicksand. You're trapped. You feel helpless. And the harder you struggle, the deeper in debt you can get. If you are trapped in debt, let me throw you a lifeline. Done with Debt. Done with Debt has created a new strategy with one goal in mind: to get you out of debt quickly and permanently. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. Then they negotiate a plan to end your debt permanently, without bankruptcy and without loans. They can get you out of debt quickly and put more cash in your pocket monthly. But you need to contact Done with Debt right away because some debt solutions expire. It's easy to get started. Just go to donewithdebt.com and get a free consultation. You have nothing to lose. Talk with one of their experts about a strategy that will end your debt faster and easier than you thought possible. Visit donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.